This week on the College Football Roundup, the Hoosiers survive a scare, the Ducks drown the Hawkeyes, the Cornhuskers tame the Bruins, and so much more. This is the Monday Report, starting now! All right, hello everybody. It is Monday, November 10th, 2025, and this is the Monday Report. I'm your host, H. James K., and boy, was it a bizarre week of football we had this week. All right, we got a packed show for you. We're going to talk about Indiana versus Penn State, Oregon versus Iowa, Washington versus Wisconsin, Nebraska versus UCLA, and so much more. This weekend was just, it was crazy. It was boring as hell and really exciting at the same time, usually in the same game. So right off the top, we got to talk about the Indiana Hoosiers surviving against the Penn State Nittany Lions. So Indiana was in Happy Valley for the game, and the Hoosiers overcame a valiant effort from the Nittany Lions to win the game 27-24 on a game-winning drive. Man, it was such a heartbreaker for Penn State. It was one of those things where this was a team, they were down like 20-7 or whatever, and they scored like 17 straight points, and it's, oh my God, Nick Singleton's on fire, and the defense has gotten a turnover, and things are just going so well. Can they finally defeat a top 5 team for the first time since like 2016? And then they had to give the ball back to the Hoosiers. But the Hoosiers go 3 and out and punt it back to Penn State, who then runs a little bit of clock out, but then has to punt to Indiana. And that, inside the 2-minute warning, that is where the Indiana Hoosiers, quarterbacked by Fernando Mendoza, that's when they just said, you know what, time to call a game. Let's get out of here. They went right down the field on an incredibly efficient drive and won the game on an insane toe-tap touchdown at the back of the end zone for a score of 27-24. Fernando Mendoza, this was his Heisman moment. He didn't play great, but his play was clutch. When the chips were down and nothing was working, he was there to get them the yards and the points that they needed when it mattered the most. Right in crunch time. He finished the day 19 of 30 for 218 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. And that interception was in the fourth quarter. He also had 6 carries for 20 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. The biggest play of the game, as I mentioned, was the crazy toe-tapping touchdown for Omar Cooper, who finished the game with 6 catches for 32 yards, and the majority of those 32 yards, like 17 of them, was that insane one-toe tap catch in the back of the end zone. Penn State backup quarterback Ethan Grunkemeyer, God, his name is so crazy, 22 of 31 for 219 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. He was good, he wasn't great, but he's the backup. So that's, what you can expect. The big thing for Penn State, though, was Nick Singleton. Nick Singleton had 10 carries, 71 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He was dynamite in the fourth quarter. And it was one of those things where Penn State, they weren't playing well, but they were playing better than Indiana for a brief period of time. They weren't playing well, but they were playing well enough. And then Fernando Mendoza said, I want to win the Heisman this year. And he just went down the field and took the game from him. It might be the best game I've watched all season. It was very exciting, and it was just one of those there was defense and there was offense. There was highs and lows for both teams, and it had a crazy close finish. It was really something. Now, Indiana is now 10-0. And Penn State has now fallen to 3-6. And man, Indiana 10-0. That's the kind of thing you see in like EA Sports College Football 25 or 26. You don't really think about Indiana being 10-0, but man, they're something this year. They're real good. Moving on, we got to talk about the Oregon Ducks at Iowa. So Oregon finally made their way to Iowa City to have some fun at Kinnick Stadium under the lights in a driving rainstorm. And man, oh man. See, you're not a Big Ten team until you've played a scrappy, inferior team in a driving rainstorm where both teams play like garbage and the score is like 18-16 like it was in this game. You're not really a Big Ten team until you've experienced that. So, congratulations, both Oregon and Washington are officially Big Ten teams. Oregon won the game on a game-winning field goal to win 18-16, and man, this game was crazy because Iowa punts on their first drive, which okay, whatever, but the long snapper hurls this ball over the punter's head. He barely leaps high enough to catch it. He catches it and barely gets the punt off before the return team blocks it. Okay. Second Iowa drive. Same thing happens, but this time that ball flies 10 feet over the punter's head and goes all the way to the goal line. Now here's the thing. The punter for Iowa was brilliantly smart. He knew that if he just kicked the ball into the end zone, it wouldn't be a safety. It would just be half the distance to the goal, first down Ducks on the Iowa 1-yard line. So in order to prevent a touchdown from Oregon, he batted the ball with his hand into the end zone, then kicked it out of the back of the end zone, which results in a safety. Either Oregon can accept the penalty and the safety and get 2 points, or they can deny the penalty and take the safety and get 2 points. It prevented Oregon from getting a touchdown, when, by all accounts, they should have gotten a touchdown. There were 3 guys trying to get the fumble, but the Iowa punter managed to kick that bad boy out the back of the end zone in one of the most heads-up plays you'll see all season. That is very much a he knows the rules kind of play. So that was early on, and this game was just awful. I mean, it was awful in that it was sloppy, but it was great in that it was exciting and sloppy. Dante Moore, the Oregon QB, finished 13 of 21 for 118 yards and an interception. He also contributed 4 carries for 46 yards rushing and a touchdown. He had a 49-yard rush, but he also had 3 negative yards as well on the day. And Dante Moore wasn't great, but when it really mattered, he made some clutch throws. Like, he made this one throw down the right sideline late in the game where the Iowa defense is all over the receiver. And it isn't like they say, fitting the ball in a window. This wasn't a window. This was like a porthole. It was like a tiny little area where he was able to get this ball in front of the receiver, over the shoulder of the defender, without the defender seeing it. And it was a great throw. But he was okay otherwise in the game. He did have 1 turnover, but he did make up for it with a rushing touchdown. The biggest thing, though, for Oregon was Noah Whittington, their running back. He had 17 carries for 118 yards. He, in my opinion, was the main catalyst for the minuscule amounts of offense that Oregon had. He played really well. He was really efficient on the ground. I mean, 17 for 118 is impressive. And Oregon's offense kind of worked in spurts. It was like really good for like 5 minutes and then really bad for like 20, So it was one of those where they weren't good until they needed to be great, and then Oregon was good, So on the Iowa side, Iowa has a quarterback. I don't want to hear anything about this, Iowa can't throw the ball. Yeah, they sure as shit can. Mark Gronowski. He played for the South Dakota State Jackrabbits last year. He had like 62 career starts at the FCS level coming into this season. He's been around forever. And they recruited him out of the portal. He went 10 of 18 on Saturday for 138 yards passing and 1 passing touchdown. He also contributed 12 carries, 25 yards rushing, and 1 rushing touchdown. It was arguably the most solid quarterback performance I've seen from Iowa when I watched their games. Like, I know he had another one that was even better earlier in the year, but from the Iowa games I've watched going back all the way to, Jake Rudock, this was a great performance from an Iowa quarterback, and it was impressive. The kid can spin it. He's fast. He makes good decisions. He can throw a good ball. Yeah. It was It was a fun game. And you know what? Oregon, officially welcome to the Big Ten. You're officially a Big Ten team. You survived the Kinnick voodoo. And you survived an ugly game in a driving rainstorm. Sadly, one of the other Pac-12 cast-off did not survive their run-in with a scrappy, mediocre Big Ten team. Wisconsin upset number 23 Washington by a score of 13-10 behind stout defense and effective running of the football. Wisconsin's revolving door of quarterbacks continued, with Danny O'Neal and Carter Smith getting snaps today, on top of also Hunter Simmons. Don't forget Hunter Simmons. Oh, and their punter. Yeah, he threw one too. Danny O'Neal went 0 of 2, but had 3 carries for 30 yards before leaving with the game, turning duties over to Carter Smith. Carter Smith is a true freshman. He's like 18 years old. And Michigan fans, this guy might sound kind of familiar because Carter Smith was committed to the Michigan Wolverines for over a year. And he only decommitted once Michigan got a commitment from Bryce Underwood. And he only decommitted because he felt insulted that they hadn't told him ahead of time. So he decommitted from Michigan and committed to play for Luke Fickell. And Carter Smith went 3 for 12 for 8 yards with 15 carries for 47 yards and a touchdown. And I'm just going to say, I don't want to hear anything about Bryce Underwood being a bad QB. As true freshman goes, you can get this stuff. 3 of 12, 8 yards. Yeah. Be happy that Bryce Underwood has given you, 13 of 22 for 147 yards and a touchdown with no picks. And he also contributes like 40 yards on the ground. Be happy that Bryce Underwood is doing that because you can be dealt with Carter Smith. And you know what? I'll say it. Carter Smith is going to be a good quarterback. He's fast as hell. He was pretty smart with the football. He has pretty good arm strength. Now, admittedly, he's a freshman. It wasn't impressive. He was 3 for 12 for 8 yards. But the 47 yards rushing and the rushing touchdown that he contributed, that was the key. Because the Wisconsin rushing attack carried the day with 47 total rushes for 157 yards rushing and a single rushing touchdown from the aforementioned Carter Smith. Here's what I'll say about this game. Washington should have won this game. I'm sorry, they should have won this game. They were the better team. They played better. DeMond Williams was not great, but he was solid. But at the end of the day, if you can't defend the run and you can't move the ball, then where does that leave you? Oh yeah, it leaves you losing a game 13-10 against a team that couldn't throw the football. Let's check his stats, because I actually forgot, like an idiot, I forgot to record DeMond Williams Jr.'s stats before I started recording. So let's find those really quick. Where are they? There they are. DeMond Williams Jr., he went 20 of 32 for 134 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, and he had 19 carries for 61 yards with a longest carry of 36 yards. The problem for DeMond Williams Jr. is when the chips were down, there were times where he was trying too hard. Something that you see in young quarterbacks where we need to tell these young guys, listen, if it ain't there, it ain't there. It's okay to throw the ball away on a 3rd and long instead of throwing a back-breaking interception in crunch time. Yeah, if you believe in your abilities, you can get out of the pocket and run around and maybe make something happen. But if you do that, you have to be smart. You can't take a giant sack. You can't throw an interception. You can't fumble. So for DeMond Williams, it was an instance where a young quarterback trying too hard to make the big plays that fans expect of him. When it's like, young guy, young buck, just live within the offense. It's okay to win a game 15-13. It's okay to win ugly as shit. It's fine. You know what? If you throw for 120 yards but you guys win, that's okay. I don't care how you win, as long as you get that W at the end of the game. So for him, he's pressing and he's making really bad decisions late in games, and it's ultimately contributed to Washington not winning, because they should have won. They could throw the ball. Wisconsin couldn't. Wisconsin was not playing complementary football. They're playing football with one arm tied behind their back and an eye patch. And yet they won anyway, because Washington just could not get out of their own way. And if it wasn't mistakes from the QBs, it was horrible penalties or failed gap integrity on defense, leading to big rush plays, or failing to keep contained for Carter Smith and allowing him to run free. I'm losing my voice. It was a team that wasn't well coached. They weren't well prepared for a game that was a dogfight. They came in thinking that they were going to push Wisconsin around and win a game that was low scoring but easy, very much what Michigan did. But instead, they got punched in the mouth, and they lost. For Washington, this result is about as bad as it can get. Washington was 6-2, while Wisconsin was 2-7 in the game coming into the game. And Wisconsin had 5 straight losses. But now, Washington is 6-3, and it's one of those where not only are they firmly out of any hope of playoff contention, you're like, does their coach have his eye on a job? Because there are rumors that he's interested in the Florida job and that he hates living in Seattle where it rains all the time. And so for Washington, you're in a really precarious situation where fans are upset. Fans are furious. They finally get ranked and immediately lose to a bad Wisconsin team. This was a Wisconsin team that was DOA. They were listless. They were a dead animal on the side of the road. And you let that team beat you because distractions, poor coaching, horrible execution. And don't get it wrong, it was raining in Wisconsin, and that affects things. But when all else fails, stick to the fundamentals. Play good defense, run the ball, limit mistakes. If you can do that, you can win a lot of games. Michigan won 8 of them in 2024 playing that style of ball. Run the ball, play good defense, limit mistakes. But instead, Washington did not limit mistakes. They had too many penalties, and it was a game that they should have won. This was much like the Ohio State game against Michigan last year, where it's how the heck did they lose? They're the better team. They're the better coached team. They're better prepared usually, but they lost because they didn't execute when the chips were down. I think this win for Wisconsin is going to buy Luke Fickell some goodwill. If they can take this and kind of springboard into the 2026 season, maybe get 2 or 3 more wins, 2 or 3 more wins depending on no, they're 3-7 now. So if they can get 2 more wins out of there, if they can kind of win out or something like that, I think whatever. If they can do that, then I think they can kind of end on a high note, and maybe that can help Fickell save his job. Sorry about my math. I'm dyslexic, and sometimes it's hard to do math on the fly, even really easy addition. Anyway, I'll admit I was rooting for Wisconsin in this game. I was like, oh my God, please do it. It'll be hilarious. I'll get to talk about this game for the stupidest reason ever. So moving on. Nebraska took on UCLA in the Rose Bowl. And I tell you, there were more Cornhusker fans in the Rose Bowl than there were Bruins fans. Which is probably why UCLA wants to either build a new stadium or move to a stadium across town that's closer than 26.8 miles from their campus if you take the freeway. Think about this. Before I get into the game, UCLA's fans, if they want to go to the game, if college students, you have to get on the 405. I think it's the 405 going north, and then take the 101 east for 26 miles. That would be for Michigan fans, that would be if going from Ann Arbor to Wixom or something like that. It's across town. So yeah, you can understand why the administration would want to have a stadium closer to campus, because it's embarrassing that there's just no fans in the stands. Even when they're in a close game and it's you need the fans. Nope. So anyway, on to the game. Nebraska held on to take a 28-21 win over the Bruins in the Rose Bowl. The real story for the game was true freshman QB TJ Lateef of the Nebraska Cornhuskers in his first start. Dylan Raiola injured his leg in the previous game in overtime, and he is going to be out for a while, if not the rest of the season. I don't remember. But Lateef got his first start, and he started the game. What was it? He started the game 10 of 10 for like 115 yards. Like, it's incredible. He finished the day 13 of 15 for 205 yards and 3 touchdowns while contributing 3 carries for 31 yards on the ground. And this is a true freshman. And part of this, I can guarantee, is because UCLA has a bad defense and they didn't have a lot of tape to prepare for TJ Lateef. But still, this performance was absolutely incredible. And it's one of those where if he keeps performing like this, do you have a quarterback controversy in Nebraska? Because, I mean, how can you pass up a quarterback who's going 13 of 15 for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns? How can you pass up that like continual performances like that? So he was really impressive. Another great player was Emmett. And I said Lateef was the story of the game, but the person who needs to really get the kudos, who they're not going to because everyone talks about the quarterbacks, is running back Emmett Johnson. He had one of the best games I've seen from a running back ever. He had 29 carries for 129 yards and a touchdown on the ground. And he had 3 catches for 103 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. He was everything for the Huskers. He was everywhere when they needed him. Huge performance. I mean, good Lord. 232 yards of total yards and 3 touchdowns. It's the kind of performance you get one of those in your entire life if you're a running back. So it was huge. And I think more people in the media need to be talking about Emmett Johnson because he's one of the most underrated backs in the Big Ten right now. And I think he's going to make a great pro if he goes pro. And it was an incredible performance because there were plays where you're like, that's just tough running. That's a guy making a gap when there's no gap, or catching a ball and shimmy shaking out of a tackle and running down the sideline. It was impressive. It was impressive as hell. Now on the Bruins side of things, one thing has become abundantly clear. UCLA goes as their quarterback rushing game goes. If Nico Iamaleava is able to run the ball, they can beat you because they got a good offense when that QB run game is going. But when it's not, they're a dead fish. Like Nico Iamaleava, their starting QB, went 17 of 25 for 191 through the air with 2 touchdowns. But the key is he also had 15 carries for 86 yards rushing. And a lot of those rushing yards came late in the game when they started getting the QB rush game going, which started opening up the passing game. And in the second half, well into the second half, you started seeing the Bruins offense picking up a little bit and starting to show some signs of life because they were able to run the ball with the quarterback. Jerry Neuheisel's offense really hinges on Nico being able to run the ball, which is risky as hell because if he gets hurt or he has a bad game, then your offense is just, up shit creek without a paddle. So for Nebraska, this keeps their hopes of a quality bowl win alive. Maybe the Citrus Bowl or whatever it's called, or the Relia Quest Bowl, or maybe even one of those the New Year's Six bowls that's not part of the playoffs right now, if there are any. So it's one of those things where this was a huge game for Nebraska because you're going across the country, multiple time zones against a team that can be kind of frisky. They can be kind of sporty, and you got a much needed win. You played a good game. You didn't make too many mistakes. And you held on. You got a dub when you needed it. And for UCLA, I have a feeling the administration is going to fire the whole staff at the end of the year. They're not going to make Tim Skipper the head coach. But I think if it was me, if I was the athletic director at UCLA, I would tell Skipper, We're keeping you and Jerry Neuheisel, definitely, and anyone else you want from the staff. You fire who you want gone and hire your own staff. We're going to support you because I genuinely believe Tim Skipper and Jerry Neuheisel are a good combo that can get UCLA back on track. The team, even when they're losing, the team has shown so much more life with that duo at the top. Now, admittedly, they need a new defensive coordinator. They already fired their defensive coordinator, I do believe, and if they haven't, they need to because their defense is putrid. It's bad. It's not like historically bad, worst of all time bad, but it's hard to rely on their defense to do anything because they just make too many mistakes, too much bad tackling, penalties, missed assignments, the whole rigmarole. So for UCLA, I hope they keep interim head coach Tim Skipper around, and I really hope they keep offensive play caller / kind of offensive coordinator Jerry Neuheisel around because I really like him. I think he's a up-and-coming play caller, and if they don't keep him around, someone else is going to snatch him up and is going to be really happy because he is one of the bright young stars of the coaching world. Mark my words. All right, the next game we got to talk about is Auburn at Vanderbilt, and oh my God, this game was absolutely freaking crazy. So Vanderbilt overcame Auburn in overtime by a score of 45-38 in an absolute barn burner. Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia finished the game with 489 total yards of offense and 4 total touchdowns. To break that down, he went 25 of 33 for 377 yards and 3 touchdowns, as well as 18 carries for 112 yards and a touchdown on the ground. This was Diego Pavia's Heisman moment. It was, they got off to a rough start, and Auburn jumped out to like a 20-7 lead or whatever, and then Diego Pavia was like, "Don't worry, fam. I'm going to put you on my back. I'm going to carry you like Atlas holds up the world, and I'm going to carry us to victory." And oh my God, his performance was absolutely insane. Gutsy stuff. 18 carries from a QB is crazy. That's bonkers. That's like, you cringe because, oh my God. Anything more than 10, I'm like, that's too many. It's too many for a QB. But for Diego Pavia, if he ain't running, he ain't succeeding. And he's got to run, and he's got to be scrappy and throw the ball around. And it's just, and here an unsung hero of this is Eli Stowers. I don't know how to say his name. He's a wide receiver. He finished the day with 12 catches for 122 clutch yards. He was explosive in this game. And for Vanderbilt and Clark Lee, it keeps things going. I'm not super sure if this team is a championship contender, but as long as they keep winning, they're going to stay in the hunt. Because this team ain't going to go down without a fight. We've seen that too many times this season. No hill is too small, no valley is too long, no problem is too difficult for them to solve if you let them stay in the fight. If you give them an inch, they will take a mile. Which is why teams, if you want to beat Vandy, you got to jump all over them early and stay there. You've got to take control of the game and make them play your game. If you let Vandy play their game like Auburn did against Vanderbilt on Saturday, you're history. You're cooked. So it was an incredible performance. Very much like the 521 total yard performance that Denard Robinson had against Notre Dame back in 2010, where it's like 200-yard passer, 200-plus yard rusher, all the touch, and you're like, good Lord, he beat him single-handedly. That kind of stuff. Now, for Auburn, quarterback Ashton Daniels, he had his own heck of a game. He finished the day with 442 total yards and 4 total touchdowns. He finished 31 of 44 for 353 and 2 touchdowns, as well as 18 carries for 89 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Ashton Daniels had a scrappy performance. It was one of those kind of performances where you're like, wow, I've never really heard of this guy, but this is crazy. And for Auburn fans who have been struggling with the putrid offense of Hugh Freeze all year, you're asking, where the fuck has this been for the last 2 years? Where has this been? Because as soon as they fire Hugh Freeze, this is what the offense does. Which tells you that, yeah, it was him. It was Hugh Freeze. Yep. Yep. Now, another person you got to talk about, though, is Cam Coleman. Monster day for that wide receiver. 10 catches, 143 yards, and a touchdown. Huge performance. Dude he's going to be playing on Sundays. He's a beast. For my final thoughts on this game. So for Auburn, this offensive performance gives you hope, but the defensive performance is really disheartening because all year DJ Durkin's defense has been great. And now that he's the interim head coach, all of a sudden their defense has a really bad game. But the offense is better. So maybe you're hoping you can find a middle ground where the defense is 20% worse and the offense is 40% better. You can kind of just equal it out somewhere in the middle versus this one or the other. So, and for Vanderbilt, keep on chugging. Just keep on chugging along, keep on stacking W's, and hope that you're there at the end of the year. Okie dokie, quick hits. It's time for quick hits. First of all, Brigham Young went to Texas Tech and got blasted. The Red Raiders dominated BYU 26-7 in what was billed as the matchup of the week and had serious Big 12 and playoff implications. Instead, Texas Tech did whatever the hell they want, and their middle linebacker, Eli Rodriguez, don't quote me on that, but I think that's his name. He was everywhere, sacks, an interception, tons of tackles. They were saying he had a Heisman moment. It was that was kind of the theme of the week, is that players had their Heisman moment. So that was a big one. Texas A&M went to Mizzou and handled Mizzou 38-17. As Marcel Reed and the Aggies took care of business against a Mizzou team that is continuing to struggle to replace injured quarterback Bo Pribula. With Bo Pribula, Mizzou was a serious threat. They could throw the ball, they could run the ball, and now I think his name is Matthew Zolder. I think is their quarterback's name now, and he's okay, but excuse me, man, that yawn came out of nowhere. I apologize. But Zolder is okay, or Zoller, or Zolder, or however you say his last name, I can't remember. He was okay. Younger guy, but man, that Aggies team is something. They're super physical, and they really don't make mistakes, and Mike Alco's got them well coached, and they're a complete team. And Marcel Reed is just disgusting. Dude is such a good quarterback. So definitely circle them on the calendar. It's you don't want any part of Texas A&M. They beat you up. LSU at Alabama. Bama has their groove back. They smothered a flailing LSU team 20-9. Yes, LSU fired their head coach, and things have not gotten better. For Bama, Ty Simpson continues to impress and build a Heisman campaign of his own, and they're starting to look like the Bama we expect. Now that Ryan Grubb is the offensive coordinator and they've got a real QB who can throw, unlike Jalen Milroe, we're starting to see the team that Kalen DeBoer builds all the time. We saw this kind of team at Fresno State. We saw this kind of team when he was at Washington, when he was the offensive coordinator at Indiana under Tom Allen. This is the kind of team, the kind of offense, especially that you want to see out of a team with Kalen DeBoer as the head coach, and especially in control of the offensive side of the ball. So they're surging at the right time. They're really finding their stride after a really shaky start to the season. Wake Forest took on the Virginia Cavaliers, and I was really pulling for Virginia because, this is a team that just doesn't have this kind of success, and they lost their starting QB, Chandler Norris, and never really recovered from that, and Wake Forest won 16-9. And then finally, Colorado at West Virginia. Rich Rodriguez and the Mountaineers conquered a hapless Colorado team 29-19. Colorado still has issues everywhere. They don't run the ball. They don't pass protect well enough. They don't rush the passer well enough. They're not good at tackling. They're not good at pass defense. They're bad at special teams, quarterback. They're just bad everywhere. And part of it is Deion Sanders, the way he builds his team. The team has no cohesion. If things are going well, they're good. But the second things go bad, they just unravel. And his style of play, they don't run the ball. And I know that they took offensive play calling away from, oh gosh, what was his name? Pat Shurmur, former NFL head coach. And I know that they're sticking with Julian Lewis. They're sticking with Juju Lewis, but it's too little, too late. It's too little, too late. This team is just bad, and I know Dion doesn't like to do in-house visits, and he's not really into the whole high school recruiting. But if he's going to be successful at Colorado, he has got to focus more on high school recruiting and building an actual roster with an actual foundation and an actual cohesive culture. Because right now, they're a team they're like a donut. There's the hole in the middle. There is a hole in the middle of this Colorado team that just prevents them from achieving higher things. Now, for West Virginia, great win for the Mountaineers, and I'm happy for Rich Rod. I want him to succeed now that he's back at West Virginia. It's one of those where I was angry at him when he was at Michigan because he was a bad coach, but since then I've continued to root for him because I think his offense is very fun, and he's a nice guy, and I want to see him succeed because I think leaving West Virginia for Michigan was the biggest mistake he ever made. And I want to see him kind of rectify that mistake and achieve good things at West Virginia. And this year has not gone to plan. They're not great, but you're building a bedrock so you can be better in 2026. First year is always kind of ugly, kind of messy. But if you can kind of build a foundation for 2026 and beyond, then, maybe he can build a winner. All right, next week. Michigan is taking on Northwestern, and right now, BetMGM has Michigan favored by 10 points with the over-under of 40.5. Personally, with Michigan coming off of a bye and the game being on the road, I'm predicting that the offense is going to struggle, and Bryce Underwood's going to have another bad game for the third week in a row, and they're going to struggle to put away a really frisky, sporty, scrappy kind of Northwestern team coached by David Braun, who's a good coach. I really like David Braun. I like the staff he's put together. I like how he coaches the game. And I'm looking for this game to be an ugly, low-scoring, way closer than it appears kind of game. Way closer than the betting line would have you believe kind of game. I am predicting that Michigan is going to win the game 23-21. Ooh, it's going to take some years off my life, that's for sure. Notre Dame is taking on Pitt in Pittsburgh next week. I am expecting Jeremiah Love to go off for like 3 touchdowns. Jeremiah Love is still the best running back in the country, and he's just so talented, and the team is good. They don't make a lot of mistakes. Marcus Freeman is a really good coach, and I'm predicting them to just go and handle it 31-23 in a game that's really not as close as the score would have you believe. Texas is going to Georgia. So the Longhorns are taking on the Bulldogs in Athens. This game will look to be a Texas win well into the second half before Georgia remembers that they have to win. And then Georgia will get a lucky break and a lucky stop and a good drive and take the win 28-24 like they've done every week for the last 3 weeks. It's just what they do when they play a quality opponent. They break the heart of their opponent by stealing their soul. And then the last game I want to talk about today is Oklahoma going to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama. So the struggling Oklahoma offense will find no respite against as I said, surging Bama squad. I am predicting that Bama is going to win 27-13. And the calls for Brent Venables' job are going to get loud. It's going to be a whole thing. All right, so that's going to be it for this episode. So I've also got another episode coming out today of just another episode of my podcast because we're going to talk about the Cleveland Guardians pitch gambling cheating thing. Pitch gambling scandal. We're going to talk about the Big Ten Conference equity investment thing. Big Ten Conference going after USC, and some other quick hits of other news stories. And that's coming out at 7:15 in the morning this morning. So look for that after this one comes out. For those of you watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Spread the word, help the channel grow. For those of you listening on Apple Podcasts, thank you, and thank you. Consider liking and subscribing. Getting notifications whenever an episode comes out if you can. Leave a review if you can. Tell the word. Tell your friends and family about the podcast so we can help this thing grow and keep on going because I love what I do. All right, my name is H. James K. Thank y'all for tuning in. Until next time.